Greetings, friends, and welcome to a doorway beyond which lies another world, a world some say doesn't exist, and yet somehow, call it energy or call it entities, something somehow manages to reach out and contact the living. I'm Mercy Malick, and you're listening to Ghosts with Mercy. Episode 1. When you think you're dealing with the living, but you're not. Our first story comes from Jonathan Maseng and takes us to an idyllic, bucolic area in New York State where things are not always what they seem. Here's Jonathan.
So my parents had some friends in New York who owned a property outside of the city up in kind of the northern part of Westchester. It was a kind of a old farmhouse the wife had owned with her first husband. They'd restored this house. It was a beautiful white house that looked out on a pond, and it had these just pretty windows and decks. It was a gorgeous rustic property. Maybe a car would drive by every 15, 20 minutes. And there was nobody walking around out here. This was really far from the center of town. You would have no reason to be walking around on the roads out here. And this barn had a first floor, which I guess had been a workshop kind of area that her current husband used as a photography studio or something like that. The second floor they had converted into bedrooms for guests when they would come and stay. And the way you went in was there was a kind of a door right on the ground floor, and you'd go in, and there was a staircase that went straight up to the second floor. There was a long hallway, and the bedrooms were along the hallway and then all the way at the end of the hall. And the first night we were there, we had finished up hanging out for the evening. I went back over to the barn with my parents and my brother. My parents went to sleep first at the bedroom at the end of the hall. Then my brother used the bathroom we were sharing. He went into his room. I went into the bathroom. I brushed my teeth, whatever. When I came out of the bathroom, I looked down the hall, and I saw someone going into the stairwell and going down the stairs. And I think I called out, "Dad?" And nobody answered. And I just kind of stared, and I was a little taken aback by it. And I went over to my parents' room, and I knocked on the door, and they were in their room. I went over to my brother's room, and he was in his room. So it was none of the three of them. It couldn't have been them because they were on the opposite side of me, and I went to their rooms, and they were not there. So at first I thought, well, maybe it was our host had decided that they, were going to check up on us before going to sleep. And so I figured I'd ask them about it in the morning. I went into my bedroom and went to sleep. In the morning, we went to the main house for breakfast, and our hosts were there. And I said, did either of you come out to the barn last night? And the figure I saw was pretty clear to me at the time I saw it that it was a man. So I thought maybe it was the husband. I said, did you come out there? They said, no. We went to bed and nobody came out there. And they said, why? And I said, well, I saw a man walk down the staircase. And the wife she turned absolutely white. And looked like, she'd seen the angel of death or something. And she proceeded to tell me that barn was her first husband's favorite place on this property, and I guess he used to go out there to work, and he would always spend time there. And I guess, and I hadn't known this at the time, that her first husband had committed suicide. And she was just absolutely convinced that I saw her husband. And apparently other people had said they'd seen him on the property too over the years. And it absolutely freaked her out. It freaked me out. It was definitely an experience where I saw this was a figure. This was not a ghostly figure. This was not some shimmering white. This looked like a person went down that staircase. And the worst part was probably that we had to stay there for another night after that. So that was an interesting night of sleep. It was the most vivid encounter I have had with some sort of ghostly figure in my life.
Thank you, Jonathan Maseng, for sharing your story from the East Coast of the United States. And now, because it is our first episode and I wouldn't be much of a host if I wasn't also a participant, I take you to the West Coast, California to be exact, as I relay my story of encountering a man who definitely was not what he appeared to be. As episode 1 continues, when you think you're dealing with the living, but you're not. Many years ago, when I was just a young pup, I used to teach athletic classes at a health club in a very Tony area of Los Angeles. And this gym was quite unique because it was housed in a former residence. It was a house that had been built in the early 1900s. It was 3 stories high, and the gym was spread across those 3 floors amongst several small rooms accessed by a series of hallways and stairwells. And there was one large room on the first floor, and in that room there was cardio equipment and some free weights, but the room was accessed via a hallway leading from the reception area that then joined a perpendicular hallway, so the entrance was not visible once you were in the big room. Now, I was a very highly trusted employee, so I was given a key and told that I could let myself in after hours if I wanted to work out by myself when the gym was closed. And that was heaven to me because, fun fact, I am an unremittent night bird. I love the late hours. And second fun fact, I am a little bit of a loner. So the chance to be in the quiet gym all by myself and just focus on what I wanted to do was highly prized. So one night, I let myself in at around midnight, as I was wont to do. I went into the cardio room and I got on the treadmill. And a little ways into my run, I suddenly caught sight of something in the doorway to the hallway leading towards the entrance. And I turned my head as I was running, and I saw a man. He was leaning inside the room and looking at me very calmly, maybe a little bit curious. But we stared at each other for maybe 5 seconds, which was plenty of time for me to note many details about his appearance and for us to really hold each other's gaze. I experienced the greatest shot of adrenaline at that moment because I naturally assumed that some psycho killer had hidden out at closing time and had evaded the night staff when they were shutting down, and now I was trapped inside the gym with this person who clearly must have had ill intent. But his face didn't register that at all. It was just kind of a friendly, like, oh, hi. And then he just went back into the hallway. Well, I jumped off that treadmill. I turned it off as fast as I could, and I crouched down on the ground. I'm not sure why, maybe just to hide from him, but my first thought was I have to be as quiet as I can possibly be so I can hear where he is, because then I'll be able to know how I can get out of here. And it's pertinent to say that this was in the early 2000s, and I was not exactly an early adopter of cell phones, so I did not have one at the time. And the landline phone was at the front, which I could only access by going down 2 hallways, and who knew what was lurking in those hallways. So I crouched on the floor there, and I watched the clock. And I do not exaggerate when I say that I stayed there for 1 hour, silent and listening. And at the end of that hour, I had heard not the tiniest footfall, not a rustle, not any sort of sound whatsoever. And I thought, how could this be? How could anyone outwait me? So finally I thought, I can't stay here all night. I've got to make a break for it. So I very, very silently took my keys, crawled over to the hallway, and I started inching down the hallway on my haunches, because I thought, if I emerge standing up, this guy could be standing on the other side and he could hit me in the head with something, and if he swings, he'll miss because I'll be low, and I'll kick him in the shins and get out of here. That was my plan. So I crouched down the hallway, and then I pop out into the adjoining hallway, and I look, and there's nothing. Nothing at all. So I marched to the front door. And now I'm kind of irritated. I go to the front. I stick my keys in the lock very noisily. I unlock the door. I stay inside, and then I slam the door and turn the keys again, making a big production, very noisy situation. And then I waited. And I knew there was no way he could have left because I had the keys, and the back door was alarmed. So if he went out the fire exit, I definitely would have heard it, as would everyone in the neighborhood. And I decided I was going to stand there by the front door until I heard where he was. And I stood there, no lie, for another hour. And at the end of that hour, it's 2 a.m. now, and I just don't know what to think. I saw the man. I could describe him to the smallest detail. But now I'm starting to question my sanity. So I let myself out, I locked the door, and I had a really strong debate with myself. Should I call the owner and let him know there's possibly someone in the gym? But what if I was wrong and I dragged him out of bed for nothing? Had I imagined it? I knew I hadn't, but I was afraid. So I went home, and I set my alarm for 6 a.m. when I knew the opening person showed up. And I called them, and I very nonchalantly was like, hey, hi. Yeah, was anything out of place when you came into the gym this morning? And they said, no, what do you mean? What? I said, nothing weird, no, nothing moved around, nothing, no. I said, okay. And I was left with the only possible explanation that I had somehow imagined it, as real as he had seemed. Fast forward 2 months. I go into the gym very late at night, and the night front desk guy was in the front of the desk and pacing with great agitation, back and forth, muttering to himself. And I said, what's going on? And he said, I'm waiting for the owner to get here. I'm leaving right now. And I said, why? What's happened? And he said, I'm not going to tell you. If I tell you, you won't believe me. I said, try me. He throws his hands in the air and he says, okay, fine. I'm probably never going to see you again anyway, so here it is. He proceeds to tell me that about a half hour previous, he had been at the front desk, and he knew unequivocally that there was no one in the gym at the time. There were some dead areas where nobody came in, and he had seen the last person leave and no one else had come in. And he said he looked up from the desk because he saw a person walking towards the front from the interior of the gym. And he sees this pleasant man walk up to the front of the desk and stand within inches of him and look him in the face. And he said, I saw him standing in front of me as clearly as I see you standing in front of me right now. And I said, can I help you? And he looked at me, and then he disappeared. And he threw up his hands. He said, well, there it is. You could just think that I'm crazy, or you could think whatever. I said, wait, can I just ask you something? Could you describe this man for me, please? And he proceeds to describe to me the exact man that I had seen, wearing the same clothing, with the same haircut, down to the smallest detail. I said, not only do I not think you're crazy, but I have seen that man as well. Now, I never saw the front desk guy again, but I had many other encounters with the inhabitant of that particular facility, as did several other people who worked there. But I'll save those stories for another episode. And right now, it's time for you to turn off the lights and go to sleep. If you dare. I'm Mercy Malick, and you've been listening to Ghosts with Mercy.